Our guest in the trenches today, Bengals head coach Zac Taylor. We'll find out how good a football player he thinks he was. We'll also find out early life in the coaching career of Zac Taylor, and then what the interview process was like to be the Cincinnati Bengals head coach, and what he's learned so far in his first 2 seasons as Bengals head coach, and what he anticipates in the future as the Cincinnati Bengals head coach. I think you'll enjoy it all. Welcome once again to our beautiful First Star Logistics Studios. It's in the trenches with Dave Lapham, and we're in the trenches today with Bengals head coach Zac Taylor. Coach, how you doing today?
Doing great, Dave. Appreciate you having me.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the time. Appreciate it very much. It's going to be a little bit of this is your football life, Zac Taylor, in the early stages here, because you've had a very accomplished football life, to say the least. Your entire family. I mean, your dad, your brother. Talk about how important football is to the Taylor family.
Yeah, incredibly important. You know, my dad, starting with my dad, he's from a small town in Oklahoma. The 21 state champions is the first thing you hear about when you enter Ada, Oklahoma, is how many state championships they've won. So that kind of sets the tone for the Taylor lifestyle right away. I still call my grandmother this day. She's probably pushing 80, and the first thing she usually talks about is how good or bad the high school football team's doing and how good of a job the coach is doing. So, you know, it just kind of sends the message. And my dad was the Oklahoma Defensive Player of the Year his senior year at Ada High School. Ended up going to Oklahoma and playing the secondary there. And then he got into coaching. And so at a young age, you know, he got in and out of coaching relatively quickly. When I was born, he was coaching in Oklahoma. Then he went to Kansas State. And then in the late 80s, he got out of coaching, moved back to Norman, and coached all my Little League teams, coached all my brother's Little League teams, kind of taught us how to play all the different sports. So from a young age, I remember biking over to the Oklahoma football games, and we'd park our bikes in the players' locker room. And he had some duties that he still, even as he was out of coaching, Gary Gibbs was the head coach there, he'd still go in the press box. And I think at the time he was just stealing signals. I think really was his job back in the 80s and the 90s. And that was my life. You know, I lived an hour from the stadium. We'd go to practices, go to games. And I lived next door to Gary Gibbs, who was the coach there for a number of years. And so then it was just kind of football became our favorite sport right out the gate.
Your dad played for Barry Switzer at Oklahoma, was a captain for Barry Switzer. I mean, heck of a player, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. He'll tell you that he never got beat deep. He was the free safety, so he was deeper than the deepest. You know, I think back then he faced a lot of option teams, but yeah, he was deeper. And then I think 10 of the 11 starters on the defense got drafted. He was the lone non-draftee, you know. But yeah, they had the Selman brothers that were up there up front on the defensive line, and they had some tremendous defensive players during that era.
So both yourself and your brother Press, who's now a coach with the Indianapolis Colts, both of you guys ended up playing quarterback. How competitive were you guys growing up?
Very competitive. He's 5 years younger. I can admit he's the better athlete. You know, I had to be more skilled probably than he did. You know, so he got away with some athleticism, and I had to go the other direction with it. But probably disappointing to our dad early on, because he wanted us desperately to be safeties. And you know, he was a great high jumper in high school. He had the state record in the high jump until his little brother broke it. So he was always trying to get me to run track and field high jump. And I am one of the worst athletes you'll ever see. So that he gave up on me, and he actually moved on to our little sister. Our sister ended up being the high jumper in the family. But you know, he tried to make us safeties early on, and Press played some safety in high school. I never practiced a snap of defense in my entire life. I was quarterback all the way, but he always made time to throw with us. You know, that's the biggest thing I kind of pass on to my kids, is my dad was always there. Anytime we asked to play catch, even though he didn't really grow up being a quarterback, I mean, the amount of hours that he gave to us just throwing and catching in the yard were you know, can't place a value on that.
No doubt, no question about it. But you were a very accomplished high school quarterback. You kind of rewrote the record book in your career at Norman High School, Norman, Oklahoma. Talk about your high school years.
Well, I'm smarter than people realize, Dave, because I just go to high schools and colleges that have a history of running the option. And when you show up and you throw the ball, it's easy to break the records. That's kind of my path. Norman was traditionally an option school, and they quickly realized I was not capable of doing that. So we threw the ball a little bit more than some of the other teams used to, but we were okay. Our school split in half my freshman year of high school. So Norman was a big school in the state, and then my freshman year they cut us in half, and they made Norman North and Norman High, and so we kind of suffered from that for the first couple of years.
During your collegiate career, you went to Butler Community College, and what a year you had there! 11-1. I think the only loss was the championship game, right? For the junior college championship. What was it? 28 or 29 touchdown passes, no interceptions. I mean, that's crazy.
Well, I can promise you this: I threw some interceptions in the national championship game. So I don't know if that's on your sheet there, but we were doing well. We went wire to wire, number one in the country. We had a good team. I transferred there from Wake Forest because they had just won the national championship the year before, and their quarterback was leaving to go to UAB, I believe. So I ended up transferring from Wake and picking Butler because of their history of success.
Right.
So I went in there, and we went undefeated until we faced Pearl River, Mississippi, in the junior college national championship game. They had a guy named Larry Brackens. Larry was 6'5", 220. He was a free safety, receiver, and punt returner, and got drafted after the game in the third round by the Buccaneers and cut in the same training camp, which is pretty significant. If you're able to go in the third round and get cut 4 weeks later, you're probably an incredible athlete who doesn't have it all together. And I learned that the hard way in the national championship game. He picked me off 3 times as a free safety. And I think he scored 3 or 4 touchdowns on offense too. So we had a tough day that day.
So then you move on to Nebraska, and you have your first meeting with Bill Callahan, and then obviously he's your head coach. What kind of an influence did Bill Callahan have on your career? And that's where you got introduced to the West Coast offense, obviously with Bill Callahan, correct?
Yeah, he had a significant influence on me. I transferred in there in January. Didn't know anybody. I got no friends. You just show up January 5th. It's freezing cold. Trying to find your class in Lincoln, Nebraska is a tough start.
Right.
He drops a playbook on me. Let me. I got the playbook. No, actually, it's at my house. But the playbook was about this thick. I mean, it was straight from the Oakland Raiders. And I'm trying to be a business major. I'm in accounting. I'm in econ. I'm trying to fight for this quarterback job. And meanwhile, I'm just sitting in accounting class with this playbook. I don't know what any of it means. So they did a great job. Him and Jay Norvell, who's now the head coach of Nevada, really walking me through the process of how to learn the offense, how to call a play, how to visualize it in your head, the rhythm that it takes to call it in the huddle, how to use your cadence, just all these things that I'd had good coaches growing up, but nothing to this extent. And so they really taught me how to be a complete football player. And the timing, not only the rhythm of calling a play, but just the timing of throwing on rhythm. I never heard that before. And we would spend, just an entire individual period just throwing 6-step speed outs, and it was kind of like the Miracle, when the head coach in the movie Miracle is yelling again, with all the gassers those guys are running. I mean, I must have done these speed outs for an hour one time. No, not good enough, over and over, and to where it just trained me to do it the right way. And I owe Coach Callahan a lot. I wasn't good in econ or accounting. I quickly realized that, but football made sense to me because I'd had good coaching. And so then when I got done playing, it was just natural to make that transition.
That in 2006, you were at Nebraska. 2005, 2006, Offensive Player of the Year in the conference. I mean, you put together a very good season. Is that the year you played Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship game?
Yeah, it was. And yeah, we had a really good football team. A lot of guys got drafted off that class. Had a good year. We won the Big 12 North, and then we got beat by Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship game. And back then it was in Kansas City. They played it in Arrowhead in December, just on top of a sheet of ice. And now then the next year going forward, they moved it for the next 15 years to Jerry World and the nice dome. And now guys are throwing for 500 yards in the Big 12 championship game. And we were just trying not to freeze to death, So it was an old school, Oklahoma Nebraska type battle.
So is Bill Callahan probably the first major influence in your thought process about, I really like this. I think I could potentially like this coaching scenario as a profession. Is that where it started?
I think he probably put it over the top. My dad, not on purpose, I can promise you that. Because if you ask my mom, there was no way she wanted her boys to get into coaching after what she had experienced, in her young adult life. But probably just the way that he carried himself and coached us and coached all of our friends. My dad was the guy, 3 weeks before training camp would start in high school, where he'd get all my friends out in the yard and he'd train us and speed and agility drills and DB drills, because he wasn't our high school coach, so he wasn't going to have that influence. So he was always the guy that made sure we were prepared for training camp. And so subtly and not purposefully, I probably would have gone into coaching just because the influence he had on me and the way that he coached us and drilled the fundamentals. And but then you go with Coach Callahan and you really run the finer points of the X's and O's. And that's where, now you're capable of being a college coach and being able to help make these guys better.
So there really wasn't an aha moment as such. I mean, it was just kind of over time. You kind of thought, I might get like this coaching. Then it kind of confirmed over time that that's the path you wanted to take. Or was there an aha moment for you in terms of getting to coaching?
Yeah, the aha moment is when you get cut from training camp by Tampa Bay and you have no job. And then it's, what am I going to do? And so I immediately, 24 hours after I got cut, I called Bill Callahan and just asked if I could just come volunteer. And so I did. I went to Nebraska for a month, volunteered at the end of training camp, went to the CFL. I gave the CFL a shot for 2 months, 3 months. I joined the team mid-year. And then at the end of that 3 months, my father-in-law got the head job at Texas A&M and offered me a job. So I put an end to my playing days.
So let's I'm going to give you some names and give me your impressions and what kind of an influence these guys had on your career. We've already talked about Bill Callahan. Let's talk about Mike Sherman, your father-in-law. Big influence, obviously.
Yeah, major influence. He gave me an opportunity to be a GA, and I was a GA. I mean, I was the grunt. I know how to work a copy machine. If you ever have an issue with a copy machine, I will fix that in a heartbeat. And so those were my days. Long hours. I was working till 2 a.m, drawing pictures and just all that brutal stuff that goes with being a GA. But the benefit, the negative and the positive of being the head coach's son-in-law is, you worry about people thinking, okay, you got this job because you're family. When in reality, I always felt like he didn't really want to hire me for that reason. But he hired me. Nebraska had just gotten fired, and he hired a bunch of those Nebraska coaches, the strength coach, the operations guy, the running back coach. And so I think he was able to ask them, is this going to be a good fit with Zac and I? And I think they pushed for me. And so that worked out well. But at the same time, I felt like I had to work extra hard because here I am. I'm the father. I'm the son-in-law of the head coach, and I don't want people to look at me as getting a break for an undeserved reason. And so you got to work extra hard. And two things: he was probably harder on me than he was everybody else. We've had some outstanding conversations over my time as a GA.
Sure.
But at the same time, he probably trusted me with more information to help speed along my development, because he did trust me because I was family. And so he gave me some insight in some situations where most GAs probably wouldn't be exposed to, and gave me more responsibility as he felt like I was earning it, to where I eventually got to coach the tight ends as a graduate assistant, which was critical in my development as a coach. Having always played quarterback and throwing and talking to receivers, and now all of a sudden you got to go teach guys how to block. That was a rude awakening for me, day one of tight ends.
So while you were at Texas A&M, I believe that Ryan Tannehill was there, and then you go to Miami, and you and Ryan Tannehill combined 15,460 yards in his first 4 years. That's still third most in NFL history to start the first 3 years of a career. What about Ryan Tannehill and your relationship with Ryan Tannehill? How did that make you a better coach?
Yeah, I was with Ryan for 8 years. Every day I was at A&M, he was either our best receiver or our best quarterback, one of the two. And so, I was told people for a long time, I probably remember all of his throws better than he does, because as a coach, you watch the tape 1,000 times. So I was with him every day. He was at A&M, and then got to Miami as he was graduating. We had the 7th pick in the draft, and we took Ryan Tannehill. And so he was able to walk in day one and had full control over the offense. It was the same terminology, the same. I mean, the headset would break, because in college you don't have the headset to talk to the quarterback. You had signals, and so for 4 years I'd been signaling to him the plays, and so oftentimes the headset would break or we'd be late calling a play under 15 seconds, and I would just revert back to those hand signals that we'd use for 4 years. We never talked. Matt Moore would be screaming at me like, "What does that mean?" And so, well, Ryan knows. He's on the field. He knows what it means, and we'd get the play communicated that way. But really enjoyed. Ryan's one of the smarter players you'll ever be around, and really driven, and no shock to see the success he's having now in Tennessee, because that was always coming. But yeah, we were around him for 8 years.
Then at University of Cincinnati, you hook up with Tommy Tuberville. Talk about that relationship.
Yeah, that was kind of my first introduction to the city of Cincinnati and how much I love the city, and worked there for a year and to learn a lot you certainly, it wasn't the easiest year. There's no question about that. And
right.
So just from a record standpoint, we weren't that good. So you learn a lot that carries over to your career. It's necessary. You gotta face some adversity at some point. You gotta have some tough times, and you grow from that. And so that was a significant year for me.
And then Sean McVay, you end up with the LA Rams. And you're working with Sean McVay. What does he mean to your career?
Well, I mean, so much. It's hard to put into words. And not only is he a great coach, great human being, very genuine. What you see there's no fake to him. He's a tremendous person and a tremendous coach. And really what he shows you was, I think he was 31 when I got there. He's the head coach, which is just incredible. And he broke a lot of the old school ways that you thought the way things had to be. Because truthfully, I'd been around a lot of old school coaches, the guys that had come up in the 70s and 80s and coaching, and had done things a certain way, and they'd worked that way. And Sean said, we're not doing it that way. We're going to do it a different way, and so you thought, well, I didn't think that was allowed. I thought there was some unwritten rule where you had to do it the same way as every other team always did it. So, there's many examples of that, but that was just the way he was. And, he got the most out of our players, got the most out of our coaches. You always felt valued as a coach. He always valued your opinion, and we won a lot of football games. So it was a lot of fun. I learned a lot about football, learned a lot about how to conduct a team, how to treat the players. It was a lot of fun during my 2 years there.
Dave Lapham here, and every day I am grateful for my experience to have played professional football. As a player, I realize self-motivation, leadership, and appreciating your teammates are key. At First Star Logistics, you can use those same attributes to create the life you want for you and your family. Build your future by working hard like I did. You'll see results both on and off the field. Call First Star Logistics today and be part of our winning team.
So the Bengals are an interview process for their next head coaching candidate. You've blown them away. You're the head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals. What was that process like?
That was a whirlwind. We had a bye for the playoffs. We had a first-round bye. And just the way it works, it's kind of crazy. You just get these slips in one day. I think they're allowed to submit the slips for the entire league. And so you're just sitting in your office working. And I think Les Snead, the GM, would come in and say, hey, the Cardinals just submitted a slip. Okay, well, all right, the Broncos submitted a slip. Okay, and then the Bengals did it. And so it goes from 0 to 100, as the kids say, real fast. You're just sitting at your desk at 7 a.m. drinking your coffee, and by 8 a.m. you're interviewing with 3 teams, over the course of the week. And so fortunately we had a bye. Fortunately, Sean was great about it. So I did it over a Thursday, Friday, a Saturday. Thursday night, I think I had the Bengals. I had the Broncos first with John Elway, and that was from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. I had to race off the practice field. We had practice that day. Practice ended at 5:30. I lived 10 feet from the practice facility, so I sprint home, took a shower, threw on a suit, drove to Westlake Village. I was in a hotel ballroom. I sprint in there, and interviewed for I don't know, the rest of the night. And then at 6 a.m., same ballroom, I had the Bengals interview. So I just went home, slept for 2 hours, probably put on the same suit, came back in, and I'm in the same ballroom, just new people, And so you do that morning, and thought it went well. Got a chance to meet the family, meet Duke. Everybody was in there, so it was a great experience. And then I went home, took another nap, and then the next morning came back to the same hotel and met with the Cardinals. So
Wow.
that's how that weekend works.
Well, that's a special hotel to you. There's no question about
Yeah, sure is.
That place is a memorable spot, no doubt. So obviously, you mentioned earlier that experiencing adversity, in the end, will round out who you are as a coach. And you had some adversity, obviously 2-14 the first year, and now last year having the 4-win season with a tie. What have you learned? What is it that you've taken from those 2 seasons that you feel are really going to help you as you turn the corner here?
Well, there's just so many experiences that come at you, and they're easy to gloss over. I wish we'd had all the success, and the issue we were having was glossing over some of these situations, some of the adversity you faced,
Right.
but you're winning, and so it's easy to deal with it. I wish that was the case, but it's not. And we faced plenty of issues over the last 2 years, and we're going to be so much better for it, because it's hard to imagine more that would come our way that we don't deal with, and so it's been good. And so really the leadership, I think, on the team that we wanted to rely on going forward really shone through over those last 2 years. And so you get a chance to see the guys that you want to be around, you want to lead the football team, and the types of people you want to add to the football team, and the staff that's really going to carry us through this thing. And that's evolved over the last 3 years. And so we just feel like we're sitting here today, we're in a great spot. I really like the roster that we've put together, that Duke and his staff have put together. Really feel good about every position we got on this team, and the types of men that are ready to work. Just seeing these Zoom meetings, seeing the players that'll be here this offseason, really excites you. And just like being around these guys every day, and can't wait to. We still have a lot of work ahead. We feel good about the roster, and we added some good pieces in the draft and free agency, but that doesn't mean it just you walk out there and it clicks. You still gotta develop the chemistry and keep raising the standard and holding these guys to a standard every single day. And that's kind of the things we talk about at the team meetings that we're having right now. But I'm just really excited about what we got going forward.
Obviously, Joe Burrow, a focal point of your franchise and what you're looking to get done. He's rehabilitating from that reconstruction of the ACL tear. All accounts are he's right on schedule, ahead of schedule, and no major setbacks, no minor setbacks. Knock on wood, everything's gone exceptionally well. Joe Burrow, football player, human being, both. What does he mean to this franchise?
I mean, that's I think hard to put into words. I think everybody who's been around him, anyone who's ever heard him speak, the way he carries himself would agree with that. If somebody can put a word on it, I'd love to hear it.
Right.
He just he's an impressive person. You hate to say I've been around a lot of great people, so you hate to say that he's different than everyone you've been around, but he is. It's hard to describe. He's just we're really lucky to have him, happy to have him. He's gonna bring a lot of wins to this franchise over a long period of time.
You mentioned that you've gone through a couple of drafts, and you've had the experts, the draft gurus. They all say, "Boy, the Cincinnati Bengals have put the bat on the ball on just about every pick in the couple of drafts, and very, very aggressive in free agency." You basically remade this roster. Where you've done it like by different position groups. 1 year you drafted 3 linebackers. This year you drafted 4 down linemen and on the defensive side of it, edge rush guys, interior guys, and 3 offensive linemen. So you've had a plan to remake every position group. Which position group do you feel best about, other than the quarterback position? Which position group or groups do you feel best about right now?
That's a hard one to say, because I really do feel really good about a lot of different groups. You can look at it a lot of different ways. I think we got 2 veteran safeties at this point.
Yep.
Who have played a lot of football at a high level. Or you can look at the receiver group that's relatively young and inexperienced, but the upside we think is tremendous. And I can really go across the board at every position. I'm excited about every position we got on the team. We either drafted a guy, added a guy in free agency, have a guy coming back off of injury, or just have some young guys that have really started to step up. And so there's not a position, I think about it every day, but there's not a position right now where I'm I'm not excited about. I'm excited to see all those guys get to work.
Is there anything that, now that you've had your exposure as an NFL head coach, now that you've actually done it, is there anything that, like, boy, I didn't expect that to be the situation until you've actually gone through it? Is there anything that, like, really wowed you? Like, man, I thought that might be the case, but it's even more so than I anticipated. Anything about the job?
Not that you didn't know was going to happen. I mean, you do spend a lot of time on just personnel issues, with the players, things that pop up, just like any of our families, any communication that way that's got to happen when you got 90 people and 20 coaches. That's
Yep.
There's going to be a lot of time spent on that, and I don't think you can ever understand what that's going to look like until you're in the job and you deal with that. And that's why I'm so happy to have what I feel like is really good coaches, particularly Brian Callahan being the offensive coordinator. He doesn't necessarily call the plays per se, but in a lot of ways he does. It's just because I get pulled away so often from the scheme part of things during the game week, and Brian and I just think so much alike that he just carries on, and that way guys don't have to wait on me, and then I can catch up with him. And so just guys like that are so invaluable to me. Darren Simmons, all those guys that really help when you are pulled away with some of the stuff that can keep the train moving.
We're speaking on a Wednesday morning, and later today the NFL schedule will be released. But you do know who you're playing, just don't know when and where yet. And you're playing the NFC North and the AFC West, and it gives the Bengals the 6th most difficult schedule in the NFL, if I remember correctly, based on winning percentage the prior season. And sometimes that doesn't mean a hill of beans. Sometimes it does. What's your first impression of the overall schedule that you're going to be dealing with?
Yeah, good teams across the board. It's I don't know that there's a bad team in this league. Every year I learned at an early age in my NFL career. I think the one game I've ever walked into thinking we're going to kill these guys was 2012 or 13 Tennessee Titans, and they beat us 38-3. It's the one time I walked into the game thinking we're going to kill these guys, and we got absolutely just crushed. So I learned right there, you can't overestimate anybody. You got to be ready to attack every team you play. They all got great players. They all got great coaches. They could have a down week one week, and you can't get overconfident because of that. You're playing that the next week. They'll jump up there and bite you. I've seen it a million times. So it doesn't matter what they throw at us. We know who we're playing. We know where we're playing them. We just don't know when. But we're just excited to start to be able to prepare for that week one opponent. It's always fun when you get that information here in May.
Change in that there are 17 regular season games for the first time and 3 preseason games. Is that a big deal?
Well, we'll see. That's hard to say. It's the 3 preseason games. I think will probably be good. It's good. You still got to sort out how you're going to approach those, and
Yep.
Our situation is so unique because just our quarterback coming off of injury too, and so oftentimes that affects other guys that you're going to get extra snaps to or not. So those are things that we'll sort out as we get closer to training camp. So I don't think that'll be a big deal. I think there's a general consensus that it's good to cut down the preseason games. There's probably one too many, and then the 17 regular season games, we'll see. It'll that's just the way it goes. When you're having a good year, it doesn't feel like a long year. When you're having a tough year, it feels like a long year, and so we don't plan on it feeling like a long year. That's our plan. So we'll be happy to play 17 games at that point and keep playing from there.
You just mentioned something that made me think about during the draft or before the draft. There was Team Sewell and Team Chase, and you made a comment about familiarity. You've got a quarterback coming off an injury, working with guys. How big of a deal in the decision-making process was the relationship that's already been established between Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase?
It was just an added plus. That didn't drive the decision.
Mm-hmm.
But it certainly wasn't a bad thing. It's good in a lot of ways, with kind of a different offseason and Joe, coming off the injury and not getting to do the exact same offseason you typically have with your quarterback. It eliminates a lot of the communication between the two guys.
Right.
It's not Joe trying to feel his way through this new receiver from certain school that he didn't know. And how do I talk to this guy? How does he respond to me? He knows. He's played with this guy for 2 years. So you cut through all that crap right away.
Yep.
And he can talk to him just like they did as they were winning the national championship game, you know? And so that's just a bonus, really. I don't look at that as the driving force behind why we drafted Jamar. We drafted Jamar because we think that he's going to be a really, really good receiver. He's got all the traits. He's got the work ethic. He's got the drive. Everything that we want in a receiver, he's got it. And so there's your reason right there for taking the guy. But on top of that, he and Joe have a great relationship. They've had a lot of success together, and so that's going to be fun to watch them develop together.
You decide to make a trade down in the second round. You still get a guy you targeted that you liked even at 38 in Jackson Carman, and you're able to pick up 2 additional 4th-round picks from the New England Patriots, which that move obviously makes the draft. I mean, it just stands out as, boy, that's a big deal. To get those additional 4th-round picks when you had players identified that you really liked in the 4th round and you're able to get 3 of them, how big a deal was that in the success of the draft?
Big deal, really big deal. You know, I remember that morning, Saturday morning, we had long conversations about how we were going to order these guys in the 4th round. We had 3 picks, and you know, we were very happy to get the 3 that we got. I mean, those were 3 that we were really, if we could check the box on all 3 of these guys, we'll be thrilled. And you know, there's probably 7 or 8 guys in that mix that day.
Right.
But if we only had 1 pick, it would have been that would have been tough. You know, you're leaving a lot of players out there, and we were able to hit 3 different positions and feel really good about our depth and having guys that we really think have a chance to develop into really good players for us. But just immediately, it really helps the depth at those positions as well, to where, particularly in this division, they were all big guys. You know, we took guys up front on both sides of the ball, and that was key, because it's, as I look around, that seems to be the theme amongst Baltimore and Pittsburgh and Cleveland, is they got a lot of depth on both sides of the fronts, and they just keep coming at you. And so I think that we're doing a really good job developing that as well.
When you did back, you know, the draft is interesting. You never know when runs are going to occur. End of the 1st round, 4 out of 5 picks are edge rush guys. You know, and then when you move back, offensive linemen start to go, which I'm sure you anticipated. Mm-hmm. But was there any angst where, man, some names started to go, and it's like, boy, I hope our guy's still there. That's why you just can't afford to trade back too far, obviously.
Yeah, right. I mean, moving back 8 spots is probably right there at that sweet spot, and that was. I think Duke just does a really good job of that stuff, of really talking through exactly what we do, exactly what we'd be asking for, so that you're not all of a sudden getting hit with an offer and you're having to talk about it on the 5 minutes you're on the clock, you know, and trying to make that determination. We made that determination well beforehand, and
sure.
So no one was flustered. You're able to calmly talk through the situation, and we were hoping Jackson would be there. You know, he was there at 38. We would have taken him at 38. We were, like you said, when you got a player you want, you're hoping he's there at 46, and fortunately he was.
When you're going through the draft process, the AFC North, your division, play all these teams twice. Cleveland has the first pick of a draft at quarterback. You have the first pick of a draft at quarterback. The other 2 franchises have 1st-round quarterbacks. There's good quarterback play in this division, but it's also physical, black and blue, pound each other, you know. How difficult is it to not difficult, but how big of a consideration is on a pick-by-pick basis you're thinking about the AFC North?
I think that always factors in. You know, you got to be able to win your division if you're going to do all the things that people want to do in this league. And so those 6 games are critical. You know, if you're going to be in the postseason, host a postseason game, make it all the way to the Super Bowl, you know, you got to be the best team in your division. And so that always is in the back of your mind. With the same teams, we got to do the things to make our team the best team we can be. We do play 11 other games now, and so you don't make that the primary factor that does weigh in there. But at the same time, we got to make sure that you know, we build an offense that fits our quarterback. You know, the quarterback's different than a lot of other quarterbacks, and so. Right. How are we going to operate? What pieces does he need to be his most successful guy? And same thing on defense, building around a lot of guys that we got. So, but I do feel like that it's played out really well, and we're really happy with how the draft fell for us.
Coach, final question. Coming up, you've got a mini camp with the rookies. toward the end of the week here on Thursday and Friday. But everything else is kind of up in the air in terms of OTAs and mini camps, and it's between the Players Association and management and the National Football League. There's still things to be worked out. What it's going to be virtual, how much will be on the field. Is that starting to get to be a pain in the neck, or is it just something that you deal with?
You spend a lot of time, with the COVID protocols. Of course, we are optimistic that our players will be around. We've had great communication with them. It's all voluntary, but our guys are very driven, and they feel like we got some work to put in if we're going to be the team that we talk about being. But you do end up talking about a lot of the scheduling and testing guys and getting guys out of the facility as another group comes in. And I can remember the good old days when it just got the whole team in here at once. You have to worry about people being in a room together. But it is what it is. So you do, that's part of the job right now, is you got to talk about how to arrange the scheduling. And so that I'll be happy when those days are done. But it is good. We're meeting right now on Zoom with our players, for these first 5 weeks, and that's been really productive. We got some new coaches, at some critical positions, O-line and D-line, that had a chance to get with their players. And so to get these guys on the field, these rookies, particularly on Friday, will be fun to get a chance to get Jamar on the field and a lot of other draft picks and let our coaches get hand-on with them. We didn't get to do that last May. It's rookies didn't get that experience. And even if you're only getting a small amount of days with them, it's a lot better than no days with them, because then they know what to expect and as training camp rolls around. So it's critical for us.
Coach, I kept you a while this morning because it was so darn interesting, and I appreciate you carving the time that you did. I know you're busy. Your schedule is busy, and for you to do this means a lot. And best of luck this season, sir.
Thanks a lot, Dave. Appreciate having me.
Hi, Dave Lapham here. Have you heard about In the Trenches with Dave Lapham, presented by First Star Logistics? Catch new episodes from the world of sports and broadcasting. Search for In the Trenches with Dave Lapham on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.